Hello, everyone. Today we are covering the topics of Fandom making a huge acquisition. CD Projekt Red made a bombshell of an announcement this week, and Activision Blizzard continues to tread water. This is gaming news for October 3rd to the 7th, 2022. The first thing I would like to talk about is, of course, the giant acquisition with Fandom. Now, as you may know, Fandom used to be known as Wikia, which was a hosting site that would cover entertainment topics between video games, TV series, movies, and entertainers. It was operated by Fandom Inc., formerly known as Wikia Inc., until 2019, and they are a for-profit Delaware company founded back in October of 2004. Now, in 2018, Fandom was acquired by TPG Capital and John Miller through Integrated Media Co. And now Fandom has become much bigger. And what I mean by that is we saw a couple of great articles about this whole thing. One, Wall Street Journal covered it. Two, Game Industry Biz and a number of other websites also covered this, and we're going to take a look at some of those articles. So what we're talking about here is, first, this article by, of course, Game Industry Biz, as I mentioned before. This is written by Danielle, and she talks about how Fandom has acquired GameSpot, Metacritic, Giant Bomb, and a whole bunch of other sites. So, first, the entertainment platform Fandom has acquired a number of gaming brands from Red Ventures, including GameSpot, Metacritic, and Giant Bomb, as well as several other media sites. The deal is valued at about $55 million, according to Wall Street Journal, although the details about the acquisition wasn't really told to the public, so we only know so much information about it. But this is a very large deal, considering you're talking about GameSpot, one of the biggest media companies out there. You're talking about Metacritic, which is responsible for the overall rating of video games before they come out, as they come out, with links to various reviews. And they have been widely criticized for some of their practices, and it is incredibly difficult to become part of Metacritic. But a lot of people do look at the website for a general understanding of whether or not they're going to make a purchase of a particular video game. Now, Fandom with this deal has been known to just become bigger. In 2018, they had acquired Screen Junkies to bolster its entertainment and news coverage. And then in 2019, they acquired Curse Media, which brought together the world's top gaming wikis with integrated digital gaming tools. And then in 2021, Fandom acquired Fanatical, a leading e-commerce video game retailer. So to now suddenly have Metacritic, GameSpot, and Giant Bomb, and a whole bunch of other sites for which I do not know which ones those are because they haven't been reported yet. But this is a massive deal. It seems like they want to be the number one spot. Now, if you go and look at the Red Ventures website, you'll see that they have a number of different partners. And unfortunately, there is no information about the acquisition that I can find with these posts. But you can see some of the brands that they represent. You can see none of these are gaming related anymore. So it looks like Red Ventures is no longer interested in the gaming industry for the most part. And it's interesting to me just because it's such a huge deal when it comes to the gaming industry, but for Red Ventures, I think maybe they're refocusing what they are looking to cover and to have as partners. Maybe there's too much turmoil in the gaming industry that they felt like it wasn't a big deal anymore to have some of these companies. So, I mean, who knows what their motivations were, but on the gaming side, on the side of Fandom, this is absolutely massive that they are just becoming a giant when it comes to the video gaming space. So I thought that would be interesting to cover, and we are going to move right along to topic number 2. And that topic, of course, is CD Projekt Red. Now, if you've been paying attention to the gaming space this week, you'll know that the Steam Next Fest is going on, so a lot of demos are being made available for games that are not yet out. But CD Projekt Red came in, and not only did they announce they announced 5, I believe, different things that they will be doing in the coming years. And for that, it's going to require a lot of work. So the first thing that we noted is that there is codename Orion, which is going to be the next Cyberpunk game. Now, for Cyberpunk 2077, we are expecting a major release of content that we have been promised since the beginning, that we do have some details about, and I'll get into that in a moment. But the fact that they're already looking at continuing the franchise and moving forward with it, for which Keanu Reeves has said he is reprising his role as Johnny Silverhand, so that will be very interesting, just due to the nature of the storyline in Cyberpunk 2077. So I am very curious to see where they decide to go with that. Now, they did, of course, talk about that they were going to be working on more content for The Witcher as well. In fact, that covered the bulk of the content that they talked about. And I am very much excited to see what happens with the Witcher franchise, but of course I am massively excited for the Cyberpunk franchise and where this goes. So, Paul Tassi did cover a little bit about what we know about Project Orion and what is going to happen, and there are some details that I don't feel like is as important as the others, but Project Orion, the sequel, will prove the full power and potential of the Cyberpunk universe, which will be interesting, if only because I believe they are not using Red Engine anymore, their own engine for the studio. I think they're moving off to something different, so to show the full potential of the universe should be interesting, and hopefully they don't make the same mistakes that they did for the launch of 2077, as it was incredibly tumultuous. Secondly, Orion is codename for our next Cyberpunk game, which will take the Cyberpunk franchise further and continue harnessing the potential of this dark future universe, which will be exciting, but again, we'll have to wait and see what exactly happens with this. Third, it's going to be developed by CD Projekt Red themselves and not a third-party team of people, which is a good thing. The development hasn't started for Project Orion, and it's in pre-production, so we'll probably end up seeing the new Witcher content before we will see anything about this new Cyberpunk sequel, because the content for The Witcher is already being developed. And we're also looking at core team members from the original Cyberpunk 2077 are planning to move to the US, where CDPR is starting up a new studio. And this new studio location will be the one primarily focused on the sequel to 2077, and the new studio is now going to be in Boston, so they will work alongside the Vancouver location and the Warsaw location as well. There's all kinds of job postings for CD Projekt Red, so if you want to work on the next Witcher games, or if you want to work on the next Cyberpunk and you have the skills to apply to some of those positions, please go take a look either at their website or at Indeed, because they've got a whole bunch listed there. Now, we do know that Powell is going to be part of the team for this new Cyberpunk, and he will be moving to Boston for it. So we haven't been given any details about the sequel to 2077. What we do know is that Phantom Liberty, the DLC for 2077, still focuses on V and on Johnny Silverhand, but we already know what happens to those two characters. So it'll be interesting to see how Phantom Liberty, the DLC, gets put into the universe based on everything that is already within the game, although I am still very excited about it. So we'll see what happens with that. And we also don't know the location of where Project Orion is going to take place either. Now, IGN also posted about Project Orion and some of the things that they know about this particular sequel. And one of the things that they said was talking about the expansion of the studio. So the North American studio will consist of teams working from Boston and the team working from Vancouver. The project will also be supported by developers from Poland. The spokesperson said, "As for the total headcount required for such a production, I believe the best reference is Cyberpunk 2077, our most recent release, and a good reference point when thinking about development headcount and future projects of this scale. I think it's safe to assume that between 350 and 500 developers should be required for this massive project." And again, I'm not sure exactly what is going to happen, but if you take a look at some of those job postings, you will see reference to not only Cyberpunk 2077, but you will also see reference to something called the Molasses Flood, which is going to be set in the Witcher universe. So if you're looking to maybe apply for something that is part of the Witcher universe, you want to look at the positions listed for the Molasses Flood. I don't know much more about Project Orion and what will happen with it, but I am excited nonetheless because we are finally getting that DLC, and there have been some massive improvements. In fact, Cyberpunk 2077 has knocked the playtime out of the park lately and has definitely rejuvenated the player base. So hopefully they won't make the same mistakes with the sequel to the game, but either way, the changes that they have made have been very well received, and I can't wait to see what CD Projekt Red does from here. Finally, we're going to talk about Activision Blizzard. And we're going to start with Overwatch 2. Now, if you've been living under a rock, you may not be aware of the fact that Overwatch 2 had an incredibly rocky launch. First, Activision Blizzard decided to completely kill Overwatch 1 in favor of Overwatch 2. And they did give the fans some assurances about the fact that they would be able to keep their heroes and that it was going to be a better experience for the players and that you weren't going to lose anything. It was attractive because it was going to be a free-to-play game, truly. Now, the launch of Overwatch 2 was a nightmare. For one, they decided in their infinite wisdom to try and combat cheaters before anything would happen. And what they did was they implemented an SMS two-factor authentication requirement to even play the game. They put this phone number requirement in that you have to put in before you can even get into the game. And a lot of people were not allowed to use their phone numbers because of the types of plans that they had. So if they had a prepaid plan or they did a pay-as-you-go with a certain provider, a lot of these were not allowed. There are people who have had their phone number and been with that particular provider for 10 plus years who were not allowed to play Overwatch 2 just by virtue of the fact that those carriers were not recognized as legitimate, according to Activision Blizzard. So that backfired massively. They went through 2 DDoS attacks throughout this time period, making it incredibly difficult to even get into the game. So even if you had a legitimate phone number that was accepted, you still couldn't get in because the servers were being completely overloaded. And this isn't uncommon for Blizzard games. This actually happens fairly frequently, unfortunately. And it sucks not only for the players, but for the company directly. Regardless of how you feel about the company, shit like that should not continue to happen. But anyways, based on the phone number requirements, the DDoS attacks, and then the massive queues because a lot of people just wanted to be able to play the game, a lot of people were screwed. So Yang Ye talked about this on his YouTube video, which I will link below. Also, IGN covered the topic of the phone number requirement. Now, the thing is, Blizzard, being Blizzard, implements something and then backpedals when they see that the community is really upset about it. So I stumbled across this article, and this is talking about how Activision Blizzard is now going to scrap the phone number requirement for the majority of players, but not actually. So in a forum post, the community manager Jody wrote, "We designed Overwatch 2 to be a live service, which enables us to be responsive to a variety of player feedback. We have made the decision to remove phone number requirements for a majority of existing Overwatch players. Any Overwatch player with a connected Battle.net account, which includes all players who have played since June 9th, 2021, will not have to provide a phone number to play. We are working to make this change and expect it to go live on Friday, October 7th. We will update players once it's in effect." So the whole point was obviously to curb cheating and to stop disruptive behavior from players enjoying the game, and it's going to remain in effect for new accounts. So accounts that were not connected to Battle.net, as well as new accounts, will still have to meet SMS Protect requirements, which helps to ensure we're protecting our community against cheating. If a player is caught engaging in disruptive behavior, their account may be banned whether they have a new account or not. And the post just simply ends with, "They will make further adjustments in this area if it is required." I hate it. I don't mind the fact that game companies are looking to curb cheating from their video games, but you have not addressed whether or not you're still going to split the community between people who have money and people who maybe don't have as much disposable income. If you have set aside money to buy this game, to play it, but you're still with one of those providers that is not approved, quote unquote, by Activision Blizzard, you still might not be able to get into the game. And it really sets a precedent for showing that if you do not have a lot of money, we don't give a shit about you. And I really don't like the taste in my mouth thinking about that. It is awful. But while we're here crucifying Overwatch and Activision Blizzard, there is more. Recently, Microsoft has decided to talk about the fact that they need another website to convince people that it should be able to buy Activision Blizzard. Just let that sink in for a second. They made a whole separate website to try and convince investors that this was a good idea. And I have a couple of articles to talk about this situation. Now, Paul Tassi on Forbes did post on October 4th that Microsoft is really making a poor case for the acquisition of the company. What we know is that Microsoft and Sony are not playing ball. They're just not. While Microsoft is saving face and trying to show that everything is good, we want people to be connected, that Sony is totally on board with this, really it boils down to they're trying to say to people that the Activision Blizzard deal will not give them a massive monopoly in terms of the video gaming industry, but they're also trying to make it seem like Sony is okay, and there has been no proof to show that Sony is okay with the deal. In fact, Sony has been against this acquisition for quite some time. And so it's convoluted and it's crazy, and I don't know what the hell is going on, but the two companies just seem to be acting like children and not talking to each other. One is trying to save face, and the other is just crying over spilt milk kind of deal, like, but we're not gonna have access to Call of Duty anymore, and blah, 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 even though they have signed a contract to state that they get to still have Call of Duty on PlayStation for at least 3 years after Microsoft acquires Activision Blizzard, because the Call of Duty franchise exists on Battle.net. So it's very complicated. I will link the article below about why Microsoft is just not helping itself and making a very poor case for the acquisition, and really just showing Sony that they're not paying attention to what Sony is doing, and it's just messed up. The only good news that we have had from this week regarding the Activision Blizzard acquisition is that Brazil actually approves it. So here is yet another article from Forbes talking about the fact that Brazil is fine with the deal. They have signed off as saying, yeah, we're cool with you picking up Activision Blizzard. So what's notable is the way that they state why they don't mind this going through. So namely, the regulatory body there, CADE, is saying that they do not have a responsibility to protect the interests of specific competitors like Sony or PlayStation, and even if Microsoft does take Call of Duty and all other Activision games exclusive to the Xbox ecosystem, that's not a move that would hurt competition across the entire market. Furthermore, it is important to highlight that the central objective of CADE's activities is the protection of competition as a means of promoting the well-being of Brazilian consumers and not the defense of the particular interests of specific competitors. In this sense, although it is recognized that part of the users of PlayStation consoles from Sony could decide to migrate to Xbox in the event that Activision Blizzard games, and especially Call of Duty, become exclusive to the Microsoft ecosystem, CADE does not believe that such a possibility represents, in itself, a risk to competition in the console market as a whole. And if you consider how large Activision Blizzard is, that's kind of massive, that they don't think that that's going to impact anything. And for Brazil to go, oh, we really don't feel like stepping in between the two children arguing back and forth because we don't feel like this is actually competition. So I don't know what they think Sony is going to do, but I feel like there is maybe some biases, or maybe they just don't want to get involved, and it's like, you two solve it on your own. We're cool. Don't even worry about it. What Brazil is basically saying, according to this article, is that both console makers have used exclusives to draw customers to their side for eons, and this is no different just because Call of Duty is a larger series on the whole. And perhaps most importantly, Brazil doesn't even care if Microsoft is being disingenuous about letting Call of Duty stay on PlayStation indefinitely, as the point is, even if they change their mind, it's not a move that would fundamentally be anti-competitive for the market. So I don't know how you guys feel about this whole thing, but it seems like Activision Blizzard is still a thorn in everyone's side with respect to pretty much everything that's going on. So let me know what you're thinking in Discord or in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. But with that said, thank you so much for being part of Patreon. I appreciate all of you. And if you're watching this on YouTube when I post them publicly, thank you for being here and listening to gaming news for the week of October 3rd to 7th, 2022. I hope you click that like button and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.